the comparison you've all been waiting for. So right here are the three, I think quite objectively the best 7x7s on the market. We have the Aofu GTS, the X-Command Spark M, and the Hays7M. So first thing I'm going to say is if you want to get a 7x7 at all, I would either recommend getting the magnetic versions of these three or getting like a straight up budget cube. I mean, there's no point getting a non-magnetic version or getting like a Wuji or something like that. The Aofu is priced at 45 and these two are priced at 60 USD, that is. Okay, so now on to the cubes and the comparison. So I think largely it's personal preference. And they all have unique feelings. So the Aofu has a lot like harder plastic. It's also very fast, which I like personally. But I guess the downside would be it's a bit blocky, and your like reverse cuts aren't exactly as nice as they are on other cubes. Obviously you can do it, but it takes a lot more force, and that happens. It's a bit more catching in that regard, and also it's just like the plastic. The stability on the Aofu is, while it's very good, it's probably like the least stable of these three. However, the extreme speed, which I really like, combined with for a lot of solvers, I think one big benefit of the Aofu is it took about 12 solves and a little bit of loop to have it reach its full potential. I mean, I looped it further and whatnot, and it did not improve much. So that's a huge benefit if you don't want to set up a cube too much. Both these cubes require extensive work to have them reach their full potential. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it for solvers like that. And yeah, it also has a very nice flow to it and whatnot. The Spark, probably the biggest pro is stability. It's just extremely stable and reliable. Magnet strength in the Spark is, I think, probably about the same as the Aofu and slightly weaker than the Hays. The magnets are a bit stronger than the inners, I believe. But I could be wrong. They're all about the same. So that's the stability is probably the biggest selling point. Another thing with the Spark, however, is when you get it out of the box, it is a bit slow. But if you tighten it enough and break it in and dump a bunch of fast loop into it, it really retains a high speed. That's something that I was looking for a lot in 7x7s. As for corner cutting, so it probably has the best reverse cutting of the three cubes. And also it's very good forward cutting. I'd say the Hays probably wins on forward cutting, and the Spark on reverse cutting. Yeah. But the feel is, if you can hear, it's a bit of a scratch in there. But at the same time, it's not like draggy. So like I actually don't have it on me because I don't name these anymore. But the Wushuang and the Wuhui are quite draggy in their feel. And the Spark is definitely not like that. So that's a huge benefit. And then for the Hays, it's a lot more buttery smooth. Like I said, it probably has the best forward cutting of the three. And before the release of these two, I mean, I don't even know why like the Hays would not be your main. Hays, like the Spark, also requires extensive setup. It has a naturally faster speed. However, it does, need fast loop to get there. Not as much as the Spark does, but, a good amount. Corner cutting is great. Feels a lot of buttery smooth and whatnot. So that's really a good. For some people that'll be great. For some people that will not be great. And the magnets work really well. I think of these three cubes, the Hays probably has like the most the greatest innovation and whatnot. But obviously some losses to it is that it took a while for me to tension it, so it doesn't have those nasty lockups. I mean, during nationals finals I had one and whatnot. So. That's probably like a pretty big downside to the Hays, and it's pretty stable. But I would say the Spark is more stable than the Hays. I mean, it just sometimes is like a little unreliable when turning. As for lockups, I'd say probably the Aofu actually locks up the least. That's probably the biggest benefit of the Aofu, and followed by the Spark and then the Hays. But the thing is, if you work with them enough and tighten them enough, the lockups on all three cubes become rather trivial. Also, size-wise, we can put them. Yeah, I'm not sure if you notice the difference, but we have largest to smallest here. And honestly, I don't see for me personally, I have pretty big hands, as you can see, but the size doesn't make much of a difference. In my opinion, I think it's probably an extra millimeter and half of, I don't know. Yeah. These are probably the characteristics, and it's really personal preference. But for me personally, I've worked extensively with all three of these cubes. And I think I have a pretty good opinion of them. Gotten excellent times on all of the cubes. But I think, the cubes that I get the best times on and the most reliable cube for me is the Spark. And it is the cube that I would recommend most to people. Largely due to the fact that it's reliable. It has the speed of the Hays and the Aofu. It doesn't lock up in tighter tensions. Corner cutting is excellent, best in reverse, and forward cutting is also very, very close to that of the Hays. But the biggest thing for me is just that it's reliable and that I can trust it. Sometimes with the Hays, if I get nervous, when I shake, I just can't make fluid turns. And the Aofu, it's even more extreme in that regard, that it just becomes like a mess, and I just have to keep relying on corner cutting, and that can often result in pretty bad times. But with the Spark, that just isn't the case, and that's what I value most in a cube. And the other thing that's important for me is obviously corner cutting, which all three of these cubes do excellently, and speed, which I would say the Spark probably requires the most setup to get to a good speed. But once you get to a good speed, it's pretty much unstoppable from there. However, I would recommend that if you are, do not want to set up your cubes as much, I want to pick up the Aofu, because these two both require extensive setup. And the Hays I would recommend for those, mainly for people who just really like the smooth feel. So for instance, Kevin Hays himself, I don't think he would even compare these two to the Hays, because it's just a very buttery feel. It just smooth. It's pretty much zero turning resistance. And if you value that, then you can pick up. Then I'd recommend the Hays. Thank you so much for watching.